So the first thing before we get into this, I would like to ask you, in your first book, you talked about this diamond vision.
Yes.
Where you saw, or at least had the vision of being whoever else was him. You
Yes.
are you, and the other one are they, but you are all of them. Yes. In a way. And so would you say that your enlightenment coincided temporally exactly with this vision, or was it something else? Or what exactly is it that made you think, okay, this is what constitutes enlightenment from my point of view?
I love it. I love it, Gunnar. And the reason I love it, and here's the picture you pointed to, is you actually, you made me aware of a conversation I want to have. And I wasn't aware of this until last week when I had this with my wife. We reviewed that moment. I never reviewed that moment. I don't know if I never talked about it. I've never went back and reviewed that moment, or the moment when I saw behind me. Those moments were always so weird. It was always too weird to revisit them. Like go back into your memory. But I did on my walk the other night, the time with the diamond vision, the enlightenment. And the reason for two things is in what you just brought up. You just brought up a very good point. It's actually two things. So I'm gonna write another one down real quick. All right. So the question was, the answer to that question is no. The answer is right after that. It was the Buddha picture moment that I experienced. The other moments were just experiences, seeing behind my daughter, seeing beyond that. But what I didn't realize until just a week ago, the moment that I experienced, that I said to myself, this is enlightenment. And by the way, let me just, a tiny parenthesis, I liked how you said, whatever enlightenment is for me, because enlightenment is just a word that none of us own. We can get enlightened to a good pizza. You can get enlightened to a good band. What I was enlightened to is I just wanted to know my nature, what I was. Yeah. And I was enlightened to the fact that it satisfied me. And to answer, I'm going to jump ahead to your question of what I consider a marker of enlightenment is just not seeking. So really the marker is not
exactly.
seeking.
So before you continue, let me just say, in order for anything to sort of honorifically deserve anything, any term like enlightenment, even if it's not perfect, would be something irreversible. It would have to be a change that irreversibly crosses a line to something better, and perhaps makes sure that you're going to sooner or later exhaust suffering.
I like it. And I'm going to liken this to like a cog or like a link when you go in a gear and you can't go back. Like picture a gear clicking up like on a bicycle. Once it clinks up, you can't click it back, like a ratchet system. So, but I want to get back to your question. But while we're talking about the not seeking, for me was I just realized that's it. That was the only important thing, of not feeling like I ever have to change anything from that point. That was the huge thing. But specifically to answer your question, I think you're asking two questions in one. Was that moment when I saw behind her? No, it was the moment that I call it was coming back prior to. So let's take that whole thing in slow motion. This is what I just did with my wife. Prior to that, I'm sitting in my yard, I'm looking out of my yard, and I'm experiencing the yard as me and my yard and my daughter, and that's my experience of it. Nothing's different than the way it is now. That everything's the same. Then I had the experience where my perspective shift. I was seeing from her perspective, and then the shifted even back further to where I could see that I was everybody's perspective. And you know, you're out of time, so who's to say how long that lasts? And then the next memory is just coming back and then seeing the yard. Everything's identical, but everything's different. Now there's no sense of self and other. Now when I'm looking at the yard, I'm seeing it like the picture that I drew with the Buddha picture. I try to draw so many times with the Buddha picture. This one right here. These two pictures. That was it. Now when I'm looking at my yard, that was the world. The world was me. Like there's no me, there's no you, there's no nothing. There's just the yard. And then that's what I felt as enlightenment. Like that's it. I'm done looking. Like whatever. You know, the thing that I called enlightenment was that's it. This is it. This is it. Like my mind, the whole thing has been right here the whole time. Yeah. And I've been thinking it's something else, which is making it something else. So I think I answered your question in two ways. It wasn't the scene behind my daughter. It was the Buddha picture. It was the perspective when I came back and saw my yard as me, as the mountains, and feeling palpable, physical. You know what I mean? Like the legs, like how you feel it feels for your legs to be out there. The mountains, like that's you. But anyway,
would you say that it would be correct to say that it was the moment the dualism between your mind and the things it sees collapsed.
Yes.
And there was no longer any separation, and therefore the mind knew its own nature now, and that could not be reversed. Is that,
wow,
is that
yes.
what?
Yes, and I didn't even realize that second part, but absolutely yes. And what I was just thinking just now is the difference was with that Buddha pic, it's not an experience. I know I drew it as if it's an experience, some weird, no, that's it. That's what I was left with. The other two were experiences. The diamond vision, that was an experience. But the thing that's left, it feels like an experience because it's, you know, so different, but it's just what's left. So
yeah, exactly. So it's not the content of whatever you saw, it's the mode in which you saw.
Yes. Yes, and exactly, yes, exactly. Or like that guy was bringing up yesterday, the relationship to it. Like now I'm starting to see that word in a different way. Nothing's changing. Like I'm saying, I'm still in the world. Happy. You saw my second book, suffering, all kinds of horrible things happen, but it's just a different perspective. And that's what I really think the teachers are talking about when they talk about being untouchable and ungraspable. And, you know, that's what they're really talking about. They're not saying you're no longer going to step on thorns, or you're no longer going to have heartbreak. You're never going to lose animals that you love. You're no longer, you know, whatever these things are, they're not saying some weird fictitious thing that frankly, I don't think any of us would want. If we really examined our fairy tale closely, it would get weird real quick. I think what they're really always pointing to is just being the relationship is different. And I erased this earlier, but the relationship to the things inside, I don't even have to draw a box because this is the box itself. Just the relationship to whatever content appears inside here. That's the only difference. It's just the relationship between the stuff that was there, the content, and the relationship now that's different is before you do think that it's separate. Just like you said, the separation. So there's no, that's what I'm saying. There's no image, there's no hallucination, there's no cool trip. This world just as it is, but as you just said, with no separation.
Exactly. And so this lack of, or lack, you can't say, this absence of separation was this a one-off big moment, or is that permanent? Is that
both.
has
both? I both like I said, what dropped at that point was the seeking. So any type of seeking and modifying. But I don't know if you paid attention to this part that I talked about on the the last talk I said. So if we like an enlightenment to losing the waves and getting down to the flat thing, the reason that when people start to practice Zen, any of these practices that you know, the reason their lives get more horrible, the reason everything seems to get bad is because once you make the waves disappear, you're just noticing more subtle ripples. There's always a more subtle sense of form. So up here, what we call fear is great big things. I got a fear of this and I got a fear of that. But when you go down past the waves, there's just more subtle stuff that you have to use your imagination to call fear. Like I described to someone else, they asked me if I have fear, and I say yes. What I'm doing now is fear. I don't like being a teacher. I don't like talking. So I'm jumping into my fear. So I look at any discomfort, any resistance as a type of fear. So it's the same thing, just on a smaller level. And now I forgot what your question was. Oh, is it this? Yes. So no, I do think it gets deeper and deeper. Yes, I do think on two levels. One, the seeking drop, and that's great. That's like a good prize. But my insights get deeper. My insight of the same thing does get deeper. It does get deeper. The showings get deeper. But I'll have to ask you. You tell me. I showed you chronologically through that. Does it seem the same, or does it seem deeper of the same thing, or does it seem like it is doing different things? Because I would say it's the same thing throughout, the same thing, just deeper and deeper. But as an outside observer, I'd be more interested in your opinion.
That's hard to gauge from the outside, but I would say that insofar as a dualism fell away, or insofar as you no longer see the necessity of hunting after the removal of the dualism, in that sense you arrived, right? So that's not changing. But now what I feel is now that this sense of no separation will now find application with respect all sorts of areas of your prior life that has a momentum from the past. So you're still a human being. You're still a
Yes.
man, for instance.
Yes.
You probably like the Grateful Dead more than
Anything?
than Britney Spears or something. And so this non-dualism now finds its application in all sorts of areas, so which thereby get liberated. So I would say that this is a process that is probably still underway. And once your personality is exhausted, I predict that probably sooner or later you will enter a phase that will even blow you. Insofar as you still have a mind, it will be blown. And because there's further reaches of the application, but insofar as there's no separation, that is probably the same.
Yeah.
So the absence of separation cannot increase really, but the Mahayanists speak of bhumi. Bhumi means the ground. So the ground just signifies the area which is covered by the inside. So it's the same inside,
yes,
but it covers more and more ground.
Yes. And I know that, Gunnar, and just to let you know, since I haven't, I've said this to you before, I know what I considered enlightenment, and what I consider enlightenment now is nothing compared to the potential that's there. And I'm young, and I know it's happening. And I think that your intuition is right, that I am onto something that's bigger. And I do think that that it's probably going to mean I'm not going to be talking to people, things like that. Because I know, because the energy that I have to do this is different than the energy that I like to spend my time when I'm by myself and just like to do my own pressing and just listen when I like to listen.
Maybe we're in a kind of window now, because
I am in a weird, exactly. I feel like that.
Before that, you didn't want to talk. Now you want to talk, and maybe after a while, you again don't want to talk.
I'll be used. I will be used, and my usefulness will be used elsewhere. But it goes back and forth. But I'm sensing that because like I said, I enjoy being a student more than I consider myself a student, not a teacher. Like I said, I'll talk, I'll do the whole thing what people think of as a teacher, because I do have a fear of it and a discomfort with it. So I'll jump into it. But I love being a student, and being what we're calling a teacher or a coach or any of this takes away from my time from being a student. So selfishly, I do know that it's going to come to a point that this love that I have for pressing back and seeing what unmanifest I could pull back and share, that's going to overweigh my desire to share, and I will disappear. But anyway, so yes, I think there's always more. Absolutely. I don't think I'm anything close to, I know I've seen videos of Ramana Maharshi. I've seen him shaking with his eyes trembling. And the one thing I thought when I looked at that is, there's a man that could take what I can't take. So I know there's infinite levels, and I know that when I see things that there's, but the thing is my gift is I don't care. And that's a beautiful gift, but I don't even, but it's not that, okay, so you got the beautiful gift of you don't care, but you're still being propelled naturally. So now you're not doing it because of your old desires. Now just nature is forcing you. You're useful now, and we got to make you useful. So now you're going to find yourself doing shit that maybe you don't know why you're doing it, but you're going to be useful. And as I told you before, my only intuition, my magnet is to be a servant. That's what I'm gravitating for. I just want to be a servant. I just want to give, because the last 10 years has been all withholding, 20 years, all withholding. I've been a liar, insincere, completely disingenuous. And now I just feel like all I want to do is
disingenuous.
This is a lie. Yeah. I don't know if you've heard of those talks. To everyone, you have to. I've had talks. People, why you can't talk normally.
Yeah. For instance, I hate the way you praise everybody if you get on your nerves.
Yeah, I know. I get that.
Because that's just a quick way of getting rid of them. Oh yeah, you're so great. You're so right.
Yeah, but you know what? Hey, but I'll let anybody know and in on my secrets. You're right. These are all part of my secret little what do you call it, maneuvers and tricks. But I'll tell anybody. All my secret tricks are out in the open. And everybody knows me. Like everybody knows I've said a million times I'm a liar. Don't believe anything I said. It's all a lie. But these are the people that know me. So whatever.
That's because you lost your lying muscle. You said on that video.
Recently. I swear to God, that just happened recently. Only recently.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
I can take all. I just have to ask you about your secrets now, and you have to tell me.
Yeah, I mean, I have to be respectful of other people, but for mine secrets, honestly, I find it fun. I like comedy more than anything, so I think it's funner to talk about your weaknesses, your insecurities.
Okay, so who's your favorite comedian?
Oh, the worst ones, the most filthiest ones. Norm Macdonald, who just died, was probably my favorite one.
Patrice O'Neill.
I love Patrice O'Neill. One of my top 5 favorite. Patrice O'Neill. If you know him, you may know Greg Giraldo. Then he was part of that same group. It's part of the same group. Look up Tough Crowd. That's where Patrice came from. Everybody in the Tough Crowd you'll like. Patrice O'Neill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that was just an aside.
The more offensive, the better.
Yeah, good.
I just saw, speaking of that, before we get back to serious stuff, me and my wife just got to see Louis C.K. I don't know if you've ever heard of him in there.
Yeah.
He got canceled. He's one of the big people that got canceled. He's the
good.
worst.
I have to see him. If he got canceled, that's my
Louis
man.
C.K. All right. Get back into your Vipassana. So that was the first question.
Vipassana.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. So I can already see how we're going to cut up this video, because we're already almost like at minute 40 or something. Time just flies by, and I can already see how we're going to upsection it into the.
That's fine. Hey, we got forever, Gunnar.
What is enlightenment, and now we're the fun part about comedians, and now we're getting into the Vipassana system.